And for our last talk, we are going to turn to A/B testing. So here I have compiled 3 amazing speakers who are going to talk about some of the lessons that they've learned over the years and some of the challenges they've faced when A/B testing, and just give us some best practices around how to effectively prioritize what we want to test. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Karin from Duolingo to kick things off.
Thank you, Vesna, and hello, everyone. It's a lot of pressure to be described as amazing speakers. I can confirm at least the other 2 are. My name is Karin Tsai, and I am a senior engineering manager at Duolingo. I've been there for about 7 years now and have been able to witness firsthand how important and how critical A/B testing has been to improving as a company and into improving our product. So I'm glad that Made by Many just talked about language learning as an ambition that people have. Turns out a lot of people want to learn a foreign language. Duolingo is currently the most popular way to learn a language online with over 300 million users. And since we've had A/B testing from the beginning, we've run over 3,000 experiments to date with about 150 to 200 running at any given time. This has been a process, and we've iterated and improved on these processes for a while, implementing improvements to our analytics framework, to our experiment tools, and to our decision-making processes. At this point, we'd like to think that we want to be a company that strives to make the app better just by a little bit every week. In order to do this, we need to rely on data from our A/B tests to make sure we're making informed decisions about how to make a better product. But it's not always easy to do so. So today I'm going to walk through 3 operating principles that we strive to implement at Duolingo that leads us to be a company that really strives for constant improvement. Our first and probably most important principle is to put our learners first. Many of us join Duolingo because we care a lot about the mission of equalizing educational opportunities for everyone around the world. So when designing experiments, we always ask ourselves, what are the learning experiences we want to create? Everyone at Duolingo is educated about the why of why we run experiments. We run experiments to take us a step closer to the goals that we want to accomplish. And by everyone rallying around this concept of why we run experiments, it becomes a lot easier to create an A/B testing culture that has purpose and direction. So because everyone wants to contribute to this mission, we have hundreds of experiments running at any given time. And we need a process in place for making sure that we're making informed decisions around data. Every single change to our product is an experiment. Now, we completely recognize that this isn't necessarily the best way to go for all companies. And later on, Bruno will give a great talk on why this might not be the case for every change. But so far, it's worked out pretty well for us. We were able to increase our D1 retention from 13% on launch up to 55% today, just through this persistent incremental approach to A/B testing. The second operating principle is to prioritize ruthlessly. We have millions of learners trying to learn a language every day on Duolingo and only 200 employees. That means that every change we do has to be high ROI. And if we try to test everything that comes to mind, we're not going to have enough time to make actual improvements to our app. So how do we create processes that prevent us from testing everything under the sun and make sure we're working on the right things? One very successful process we've implemented is what we call the one-pager, and many of you today probably already implement something like this in your own companies. A one-pager is a short template that forces an author to think about the right questions to ask when deciding whether or not to dedicate resources to an experiment. Some of the questions on our one-pager include, what business metrics or KPIs do we hope to change via this experiment? What is the problem that we're trying to solve for our learners? Are there other teams or even the community in general that needs to be informed about this change before it happens? And my personal favorite is, what does success look like for this experiment? This last one is really important because by defining success early on, it prevents drama for when you're deciding whether or not to launch or kill an experiment, and also forces you to come up with a hypothesis for what you think will happen. This lets us test our product IQ, test our intuitions, and update them if we're wrong or reinforce them if we're right. This one-pager is our defense against spaghetti testing, ensuring that every new experiment gets the right amount of advice and buy-in from all stakeholders, including our CEO, before we start implementing it and dedicating resources to it. So after the one-pager phase, we go through a pretty typical development cycle that many of you probably also already do. We do low-resource wireframing, we write out technical specs, we prototype, we iterate, and then finally, once we get a solution we're satisfied with, we implement the whole thing to be ready to be shown by users. Through every step of this process, we're making sure that everything is still aligned to that original one-pager and the mission for that experiment. And if it's not the case, we start over again with a new one-pager. So after this, we test and we wait. We run the A/B test, checking the metrics every day to make sure nothing's going horribly wrong, which it has before. And after about 2 weeks, we make a decision about whether or not to continue running the experiment, to launch it, or to kill it. This last step is one of the most important ones, which is sharing our learnings. At Duolingo, we have all-hands presentations and an email group that everyone is encouraged to send their experiment results to. This creates a culture where everyone is learning at the same time about what is working and what isn't, and everyone's able to get access to historical data around what works and what doesn't, so we can make better decisions for future experiments. This also encourages a culture of no shame. We often learn so much more from failed experiments than we do successful ones. The final operating principle is test everything, parentheses, within reason. Because we strive to be a company that improves incrementally every week, that means we want to rely as much as we can on real data from real users. However, in order to test everything, we needed to scale in such a way that we were able to test everything. So in the early days of Duolingo, only a handful of people could create or run experiments. Since 2017, we implemented an online training system that teaches anyone at Duolingo how our experiments framework works. Anyone from PMs to junior engineers can learn how to create experiments, and through this online training program, after you do a short quiz at the end to test your understanding, you automatically get access to our experiments framework and can implement and create your own experiments. This process dramatically reduced friction to creating an experiment, and since implementing it, we've seen a vast increase in the number of experiments we run month to month. We've also invested drastically in our analytics framework so that not only can everyone run experiments, but everyone can also analyze them on their own. Every morning, we generate a report of all currently running experiments, what KPIs they're affecting, and whether or not those effects are statistically significant. By creating pretty simple but smart tools like this, not only is everyone aligned on why we run experiments, but also knows how to run experiments. The cost to running an experiment and analyzing it is super low. But remember now we also have a one-pager process to make sure that even though it's very easy to run an experiment, we're running the right ones. This balance of just enough process to prevent spaghetti testing, as well as empowering everyone in the company to be able to run A/B tests, is how we strive to be a company that improves incrementally every week. So to sum up the 3 operating principles I went over today, the first one is learners first for us. If you foster a culture that everyone believes in and can rally behind, it makes it a lot easier to align everyone on the types of experiments you want to run, and also motivates everyone to want to contribute to that culture. The second is to prioritize ruthlessly. Make sure you create a process, like the one-pager, that ensures that you're working on the right things that are important to you. And finally, test everything within reason. By empowering your entire company to run experiments, collectively you enable yourselves to take thousands of small steps to yield big improvements. So we're constantly iterating and constantly learning and improving on how we do A/B testing, and I think there's no better audience to learn from than the people in this room. So if you have stories of the successes or the challenges you're facing, please come find any of us after this talk. We'd be very happy to chat about it. And now I'm delighted to introduce Jean-Loup from Dailymotion to talk about how Dailymotion uses A/B testing to build a great product.
Thank you, Karin. This experience resonates a lot for us at Dailymotion. So I'm Jean-Loup, I'm VP of Product. At Dailymotion, we run global video services. And we've been founded in 2005. But in 2017, we decided to revamp our entire product. We are now defining ourselves as the home for video that matters, surfacing premium video from official content partners. We get a significant audience of 250 million monthly active users. They're generating 3 billion views. And those numbers are quite decent when it comes to A/B test and getting significant results out of them. So when preparing this talk, Vesna asked me, how do we actually prioritize A/B tests at Dailymotion? And the answer is quite simple today. Our A/B test roadmap is our product roadmap, as every project of our roadmap has at least one A/B test in it. But if you had asked me the same question 2 years ago, it wasn't the same at all. And I want to walk you through this journey of building an A/B test framework and scaling it today, as of today. So in 2017, we had a very small data team of 2 talents. So we were running some basic A/B tests, mainly focused on UI, and applying some small changes to see how it works. We decided in 2017 to build our own A/B testing framework. And this was mainly driven by the fact that we wanted to change our backend APIs and some recommendation engine, and no third-party tool enable us to do that. So we decided to go for our own stack. This stack has been built also with a tooling, quite the same journey as Duolingo, that help us scale the A/B test process. But the most important change we operate during 2 years is to become more data aware today. Because in 2017, we decided to revamp the entire product. The mindset we had at that time was design driven. We believe in a product vision, in a new product positioning, so we really had to build an MVP of it, driven by the design and the experience, and try to test it on the market. Once we've done that and we successfully launch our MVP, we actually start to get the data, get the usage, detect opportunities thanks to this data, and use A/B tests to actually take better informed decisions. We are not defining ourselves as data-driven today because we're still taking a lot of decisions to transform our audience and to move towards this new vision. So we define ourselves as data aware. So coming back to the tool that we built, here's a set of dashboards that we're using today for A/B test, and it's very important and key for the scale we are doing today. So scoping at the beginning to know how long we will run an A/B test, monitoring during the test, take the decision once the test is finished, and also monitoring once it's released, making sure that the impact we measure during the A/B test is the correct one in production. I will focus specifically on the scoping phase, which was quite a challenge for us at the beginning, but now we have a simple dashboard for the PM to take informed decision. Where do they want to test? Is it in a specific country, on a specific platform? Thanks to this dashboard, they can better scope their A/B test and know how long they should run it for. So today, most of our A/B tests run for 7 to 10 days. But one of the challenges we faced was to take the decision when the A/B test was finished. So it's pretty easy when an A/B test has some hypothesis and it's validated at the end. You just release it. But what happens when it's not validated? Should I reject completely the product improvement I invest on, or should I try again and invest more and iterate to reach my KPIs? So we've been thinking about the different decisions we took and found out that we had two types of tests, two types of product improvement. The first one is the major product release, what we call foundation product, which is like revamping an entire experience. New homepage, new video page, new recommendation engine. Those foundations are very important to move toward our vision. Once the foundation is built, then we start experimenting, and this is more changes, more experiment, more tweaks. This is lowest investment, and I would say it's way easier to take the decision to reject a small experiment than reject a completely revamping of an experience, to reject a foundation. So one of the challenges I would like to mention here is for this major product release, how do you safely release them? So we've been thinking about our process, and I wanted to share with you guys some experience, so our experience around that. So now, when we work on those foundations, we run multiple A/B tests. The first one is once you have a MVP, a running version, just test it. You will not release this version, but at least you will make sure that there's no major backlash to this release. See if, when you start to test it, if there's major backlash, maybe you need to work more on it. Then, once it's quite stable, we found out that we had to measure several things. And one of our challenges is, at some point, at the beginning, we set too much KPI to be improved at the same time. Now, the multiple A/B tests help us to better take decision on some metrics to be stable and some metrics to be improved. So today, in our A/B test process, we set only one primary KPI, one very close to our product change that measure the success of these changes. At Dailymotion, because we are revamping the entire product, we also have our North Star KPI, which is the premium views. This North Star KPI is key for us to measure the success of our transformation, and it serves us as a guardrail metric. So to kind of sum up the situation for this big major release, because the investment is very high, we actually work on several A/B tests, try to improve step by step before releasing it. And once it's successful, then you roll out entirely the new feature. I wanted to take an example, a concrete example of a journey for major release, which is our machine learning recommendation engine. We used to use a third-party engine from our previous product, and we decided, thanks to the scaling of our data team, to build our own. The first goal of this in-house engine was to measure if it could perform as well as the previous one. So it's the foundation. And based on the foundation, we could actually experiment and try to improve it. So the journey was quite long, and we actually learned a lot from this experience. So we ran it so it took us 6 months, 5 tests to actually end up in a situation when we could eventually release it. So the key takeaways of this presentation is, for us, the first thing is to reset your mindset. If you want to go through this journey of A/B test, you have to be more data-driven, maybe data-aware like us. For major product release, run multiple A/B tests and set correct goals according to the A/B test you're running. And the last one, measure the transformation of Dailymotion by setting your North Star KPI. For us, is the premium views. So I would like to leave the floor for Bruno from Monzo that will share his experience too. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Very, very excited to be here with you in Amsterdam. I'm Bruno, a product manager at Monzo. Today, I want to share some of the challenges and the learnings that we've had in our A/B testing journey over the past few years. But before we get started, just a quick context on Monzo in case you don't know it. Monzo is one of the UK's most recent banks. We started 4 years ago, and we're currently one of the fastest growing banks in the UK, with just over 3 million customers. But the journey that I want to share with you today, the story that I want to share with you, is from something that happened something like a year ago. So it was a very different type of company. We had less than half the customers, less than half the staff, and a complete different way of working. So the challenge of this team was to optimize the activation funnel, to really introduce customers to the value of Monzo as fast as possible. And how do we do this? So our strategy for this was to use as many A/B testing as possible, to really enter a mode of high-tempo testing to try to improve the funnel throughout. And if you think of our sign-up funnel, so this is a sign-up funnel for a bank. You're opening a full bank account, which means when you start looking into where are the biggest pain points of our funnel, it's no surprise that it's on the legal documentation that we had a drop of 20%. At this stage, we ask customers to take a photo of their passport, which they might not even have with them at the time, and to take a selfie video, which can be incredibly awkward if you're outside. So we mapped our entire product journey on our team room walls, and we're trying to look at the conversion screen by screen, trying to understand where we could drive, even if it was 0.something% improvement on every stage of the funnel, week on week. After a few months, we could deliver tremendous impact for the business. So every week, we would start a new sprint, and we had our ideation sessions where the entire team would contribute with potential A/B testing experiments. We would then go through an impact assessment process, prioritization, design, execution, and releasing to the store. All of this lasted 5 days. And you start seeing a pattern here, which is, it is very quick to launch a new test, but then you will have to wait 2 to 3 weeks for that experiment to read the learnings from that experiment. So the more experiments you launch, the higher your stock of running experiments is. And that can start complicating the development process by quite a bit. I want to give you an example. So take our sign-up funnel, and if you want to do 3 tests on 3 different stages of the funnel, you would actually have to use completely different segments on each of these tests, because these experiments need to be mutually exclusive. Now, at the time, we had something like 3,000 customers signing up every day. But then you have to split that between iOS and Android, and then you start splitting them between all of the different experiments. And that's when you start hitting the limits of how many things you can test in simultaneous. But because it's so cheap to launch a new A/B test, you're tempted to keep on adding more and more. So I want to share with you an example, a very concrete example of something that happened. So we had a bunch of different experiments running throughout the entire funnel. And then we wanted to launch a new test, specifically on nudging users to adding money to their account. So this is the very end of the funnel. You already have a Monzo account. The next step is you need a balance to use it. So we introduced this new sign-up stage and asked customers to fund their account. This was all very kosher. We had a control group, a test group, and we was running. Following week, we wanted to introduce another experiment. But we were running out of space in terms of new customers to allocate to this experiment. So we wanted to test the impact of offering a small cashback bonus if you move your Spotify or Netflix payments onto your Monzo account. So what we decided to do, instead of waiting for the other experiments to finish, would be to launch this experiment without a control group, meaning we would share the control group from the previous experiment. This is all technically perfectly fine, as the 2 control groups would be identical groups. However, our A/B testing systems, which we built in-house, were completely not designed to work in this way. So we were increasing the likelihood of something going wrong. And if something can go wrong, for sure it will go wrong. And we found a bug a few days after launching these experiments to customers. Turned out we were actually giving the test group to the control group as well from the first experiment, meaning control group is gone, first experiment is gone, second experiment is also gone. And because this was only detected after we had launched it, we were already in a new sprint working on new A/B tests, which were also compromised to some extent. Something as simple as this actually set our team back by a few weeks. which was a huge setback for us. So within just one team, we were trying to do all of these tests, and all of this was happening 100% inside their team, so the team is fully independent from experiment design to experiment analysis. It even happened that we missed some of the tests because, as we heard earlier, the new thing is always the most exciting thing. And after 3 or 4 weeks of launching new experiments, exciting experiments, you already forgot of the ones you released a month ago. So this was a pivotal moment for Monzo and for the way we do A/B testing and experimentation. It was the first time we had a growth team running on a really high-tempo environment for A/B testing. And the learnings that we've got from this were shared across the entire company, and we're now much more mindful about how many experiments we want to run at the same time. From the prioritization side, we now reinforce principles such as the one-pager document that Karin showed us earlier. We now have an equivalent stage in the experiment design process. From the A/B testing process as well, we now have a dedicated team working on product tooling to make sure that our A/B testing framework evolves at the same rate that our company is evolving. Ultimately, we want any team at Monzo to be able to launch an experiment and to be safely confident that they can interpret the results. So if I had to leave you with 3 key messages, the first would be to really look at the cost of running an A/B test. Don't think about it as just how long it takes to build it and to ship it to the store, but to actually look at the entire, the last stage where you have to interpret the results, to run the experiment, and the cost of not running another experiment, because there's only so many you can run. And the second point, which is related, is to really embrace your constraints, to really embrace your A/B testing constraints within your prioritization process. So if within your team, you can only run 5 experiments at the same time, really take that constraint into your team's rituals, embrace the constraint, and work around it. And finally, not everything needs to be A/B tested. Sometimes you can use different types of research, but you can also use your own product instincts. And you will not always get it right. Sometimes you'll get it wrong, which is also a great opportunity for you to fine-tune your product intuition. If you have any more questions about A/B testing, please find us in the break. Thank you so much.